It's been a while since I made a video discussing archetypes in League, and that's because I've already basically covered most of the relevant ones during my tenure of making content for this game. But I recall a while ago when I was looking through new champion releases, there's always a comment or two that repeats in every single one, in particular if the champion in question has a dash, and it goes something along the lines of this: Poppy gets buffed again. A pretty vague statement that could be interpreted as anything, but the more I thought about it, they're not exactly wrong. For every new champion whose primary gameplay measure is mobility, that's yet another champion who can get shut down by Poppy, thus increasing the incentive to play her, and by extension other champions who can do the same. While not the most attention-grabbing cast members in the game, if and when they do get the chance to shine, depending on who the opposition is, they can single-handedly be the driving influence behind the enemy team's action or inaction, that being Disruptors. Yet another technically unofficial term, but something most people won't recognize. These champions are notoriously effective at shutting down teams with an over-dependence on mobility, and without dashes have pretty much become synonymous with the more fast-paced, engage, and rushdown heavy meta modern League has become. I wanted to talk about how they might potentially be the most future-proof champions in the game, and why, at least in my opinion, everyone should consider playing at least one of them. Sort of as a precursor, I'll be interchanging the word disruption with interruption since they're more or less the same thing, and also just to make it easier for people who are sensitive to high sibilants. Anyways, while they're not in reference to the same thing, there is a type of crowd control in this game called Disrupt, wherein someone channeling or charging an ability has that channel forcibly cancelled, usually because of some other inhibiting crowd control. In addition, there's a knockdown effect, which refers to a champion who has their mobility skill interrupted mid-action, prematurely ending it. For example, if Master Yi is channeling meditation, Gragas' body slamming into him will cancel meditation's remaining duration, on top of the knockback and stun accompanying body slam. Likewise, if Gragas body slams a Tristana during her rocket jump, he will prevent her from reaching her intended landing point. In light of that, disruption often gets used in tandem with any crowd control that forcibly displaces opponents, also known as displacement or knockups. The difference between a knockup versus a stun, root, berserk, flee, or other forms of hard crowd control is that the latter does not stop their dash unless specified otherwise. This distinguishing factor has led many to regard knockups and by extension disruption as the strongest crowd control in the game for being effectively stronger than other hard CC in consequence, yet at the same time not carrying the same compromise typically found in suppression. That being, most suppressions are a channel ability rendering the user unable to act as well. The presence of a single knockup ability fundamentally changes how players have to navigate matchups. For instance, one of the reasons behind Quinn carrying the detested reputation that she has in top lane is due to the fact that Vault, in addition to being a dash, is an interruption. Anyone who so much as dares to engage on her will simply get punted away. For most champions of the dash ability, that dash ability comprises an instrumental part of their trade and all-in game plan. Therefore, any champion capable of stopping said dash effectively shuts down the rest of their game plan by proxy, making them extremely effective against those types of picks. You could make an argument that anyone with a fast-acting displacement tool can be considered a disruptor, such as Jace's Thundering Blow or Vayne's Condemn. That's true, they are indeed known for grinding enemy momentum to a halt, but the ones in particular I want to talk about are a handful of champions who don't carry all that much presence in market share but consistently perform well in the metagame regardless of what state that metagame is in. Putting it simply, I want to focus more on disruption champions, not champions with a form of disruption. First and foremost, our initial subject matter for today, Poppy. After a monumental second win she got through her VGU back in 2016, where she went from a non-existent top laner to arguably the most popular top laner in the game, the better part of 2018 to 2020 saw her drop off in relevance in favor of other tanks. But with her now finding more use in jungle and support, as well as a few quality of life updates given to her, Poppy has been steadily climbing back up to where she now sits comfortably between 5 to 10%, all while having a stable win rate to boot even after getting nerfed a couple times. Poppy has 3 forms of displacement and is considered by many to be the poster child of a disruptor. Heroic Charge is a point-and-click dash that simultaneously pushes enemies back with her, and if they slide into a wall, they get stunned for an additional length of time. The near-instant activation of this ability affords Poppy a way to stop a champion's dash virtually on reaction, especially if that dash has a noticeable cast time like Riven's 3rd Q or Zack's Slingshot. Keeper's Verdict has a bit of cast time even for the immediate activation, but both versions of it, the knockup and the sendback, are excellent at disrupting enemy plays. Notably, the latter, if done correctly, can win you the entire fight by turning, say, a 5v5 into a 5v4 or 5v3. Finally, Steadfast Presence, the paragon of interruption. On activation, Poppy immediately cancels all dash abilities taking place within a circle around her, in addition to any enemy champion who attempts to dash into or out of it during that time. Those interrupted will then be grounded and slowed for 2 seconds, preventing them from dashing or using any mobility tool again. Thanks to no cast time, Poppy's able to effectively render the pressure of dash champions to 0 for 2 seconds, which might not seem like a lot, but keep in mind many people remark on Renekton's 1.5 second stun feeling like a lifetime, so let that be some perspective. When combining all three of her disruption tools, Poppy's one of the hardest champions to engage against, since even if you can play around 1 or 2 of them, there's no way you can play around all 3. Your target may not even be Poppy, it could be one of her teammates, but so long as Poppy's within sight, she can exert considerable pressure on you to not engage. Likewise, Poppy's also hard to fight back against for most champions, whose mobility tool doubles not only its engage, but also retreat. The reason Poppy makes joke about how their champion keeps getting buffed indirectly with the release of new champions pertains to the evolving mentality of dashes and mobility within modern champions compared to old ones. Dashes were always a thing even back in the day, but in addition to becoming more abundant, they're also more intersected with the champion's gameplay. Let's compare Ahri with Sylas. Ahri's Spirit Rush indeed inflicts non-negligible damage, especially if you tally up all 3 of them, but the primary focus of her ultimate is to reposition herself to avoid enemy attacks and line up her abilities. They're not functionally necessary for her to land Q, W, and E. Sylas' abilities on the other hand double as both mobility and DPS, and as a melee champion he has to be able to get up close and personal. Interrupting a Kingslayer or Abduct is way more detrimental to Sylas' game plan than interrupting a Spirit Rush is to Ahri's. That idea has begun to apply to an increasing number of modern champions, where if you stop their dash, you also stop whatever else accompanying it. Ambessa, Briar, Naafiri, Cassante, Bel'Veth, Yone, Samira, Kiana. Their kits were all designed with the assumption that they're free to move about as they please. Disruption prevents them from doing so. The same logic applies to other champions known for disruption, and is also the reason why they consistently carry positive if not overwhelming win rates. Vex, Taliyah, Cassiopeia, Gragas, Alistar, Janna, Vi. Their ability to flip the bird against any champion who depends on dashes makes them increasingly more effective and necessary in the modern hypermobility focused metagame League's been experiencing throughout the new decade. In a sense, champions with interruption were meant to serve as situational counterpicks for mobility-heavy teams, but because mobility has permeated the vast majority of new champions, by consequence, interrupters also developed more of a meta status. Or in other words, they're so good at being anti-meta that they become meta themselves. Along with the increased prevalence of dash-reliant champions, there are 3 more reasons why Disruptors might be the most future-proof category in the game. First being how quick they are to respond. The inherent nature of disruption implies you have to be ready to respond to sudden enemy attack. Take Janna for example. Both Helen, Gale, and Monsoon have immediate cast times, meaning the instant the Janna player expects enemy attack, she can press either button and suddenly drop their pressure from 100 to 0. Jarvan EQ? Nope. Zac Slingshot? Nope. Rek'Sai Tunneling? Nope. Akali Dashes? Nope. Rel W? Nope. Literally so many champions who depend on their engage tool get completely screwed over by Janna Q or Ultimate, which is why she's constantly one of the highest win rate supports of all time. If the enemy team has 2 or even 1 champion who starts a fight by trying to dash in, her very existence can render that null and void, forcing them to have to find another way to navigate a fight, that is, if they can even do so at all. Some champions might require a bit of setup before they can interrupt enemy dashes, like how Taliyah's Unraveled Dirt takes a moment to materialize, or how Cassiopeia's Miasma covers a certain area following a cast time. But that in and of itself can still be an incredible momentum disruptor. Say for instance, the enemy Malphite full sends into your team to get something started. If Taliyah or Cassiopeia place down their stuff beforehand, Malphite will have to wait a second or 2 before his team can catch up, during which you can take care of him first while the remaining enemy team is zoned off, unable or unwilling to gap close to Unraveled Dirt or Miasma to follow up on Malphite's engage. Basically, Disruptors can both discourage the enemy team from making a move and respond to enemy teams that do make a move. If the enemy Warwick yeets himself onto your ADC and let's say you're playing Vi, you can just buffer a quick Vault Breaker to knock him off his target, or if you're playing Gragas top and you're up against the Jax, you can save your E for whenever Jax tries to Q onto you and stop him every single time. Alternatively, if you couldn't react to his dash, once he gets in you can body slam then use the 1 second stun to get out of counter-strike range. Take that and apply it to every single champion who plays in this way. Camille, Shen, Wukong, Xin Zhao, Tryndamere, Diana, so on and so forth. The moment they dash in, you can bump them and run away. That ability to play reactionary adds an element of safety in that even if you can't beat them, you could at least stop them from beating you. Second is that Disruptors don't lose any effectiveness from being proactive either. Disruption works just as well offensively as it does defensively. If you're engaging as Poppy into an enemy Ahri for 2 seconds, she has to wait for your W to expire before she can ult. Steadfast Presence might not be a true lockdown tool, but applicably speaking it is. If an Ambessa or Riven can't use their abilities, they're basically Vex even has a way to impose an interruption offensively by way of Shadow Surge, giving her a clean shot into the enemy team to then personal space and AoE fear everyone. Not only does it stop enemy champions from dashing away, but the fear itself is a form of lockdown. The one advantage that Vex has over her peers is that she can also somewhat deal with champions who rely on blinks instead of dashes by virtue of Doom and Gloom's cooldown reduction property. I especially like how they conceptualized Talia's skit though. Unraveled Earth could be entirely ignored by the enemy champion not using a dash ability, but even if they try to play around that, Talia's Seismic Shove can force them to dash by displacing them into it to guarantee the stun anyway. That applies to most if not all interrupters in the game. Alistar's headbutt knocks enemies back and away from you, but by buffering Pulverize, his W goes from a disengage to an engage. Gragas's Body Slam can just as easily be an attack as it is a defense, and more often is used for that purpose. To a lesser extent, Janna can also use Howling Gale to cancel enemy attempts to escape, especially if it's used to follow up on something. On rare occasions, I've even seen Janna players perform a Flash Monsoon to insect enemy champions back towards her team. I haven't mentioned her yet, but Lulu could theoretically be Disruptor as well. Wild Growth automatically knocks up enemies in a radius around the designated target, which can be used to either interrupt enemy engages on her and her team, or she can Wild Growth her teammate who's engaging like a Jarvan or a Malphite to follow up on their engage. Simply put, Disruption loses no effectiveness when being used to attack or defend, making it more versatile than it may initially appear. Third would be the psychological pressure these champions impose on you. Oftentimes it's not the ability itself that motivates a team to action or inaction, rather the threat of the ability that does. You hear it all the time for super ultimates. People are naturally more hesitant to all-in the enemy bot lane when they know Shen's ultimate is up, or people are more scared to walk up when they don't know where Nocturne is. For all you know, you might still be able to win the fight even if Nocturne or Shen join it, but the fear of a 3v2 and numbers advantage on your side suddenly turning into a 3v3 with a high risk of casualties could be enough to discourage a team from following through with it. Like I mentioned earlier, people are much less enthusiastic about charging in against an enemy target when they know there's a disruptor on the enemy team. More often than not, the first strike is what determines the fight. Catching at the enemy mid laner, one-shotting them before their team can respond, and then turning the fight into a 5v4 is all you realistically need to force a retreat from the enemy team or clean them up, assuming the remaining 4 members aren't able to continue fighting efficiently. The point of a disruptor is to neutralize that element of surprise. Assassins like Talon, Rengar, Kha'Zix, and whatnot could get cold feet and not want to jump in against a squishy because Janna, Poppy, Alistar, or whomever standing nearby can literally on reaction respond to them. That alone might give the interruptor's teammates sufficient creative latitude in doing what they want to do. It doesn't apply exclusively to assassins either. Any champion with the ability to engage will be hesitant to jump in against a Gragas when they know they'll just get body slammed and he can run away. Echo's gonna be really cautious about engaging on a Cassiopeia given the fact that she can stop him from ulting back to safety. As well, a Katarina will think twice about engaging against the enemy team if she notices Vex with her passive ready. It gets even more impressive if the Disruptor's on the attack. A Fed Poppy's terrifying to deal with if you're a dash reliant champion, since if she engages on you, there's very little if anything you can do to escape. You'll have to sit there and basically take the L. I guarantee you mobility champions would rather fight someone with a 3-second root than a 1-second knockup. It could be even a quarter-second knockup. So long as it contains a modicum of forcible displacement, that's all you need to negate the momentum of a wide variety of champions. Disruption was intended to be a more circumstantial form of crowd control, evidenced by the fact that knockups and displacements rarely if ever exceed a 1-second duration compared to stuns and roots, which regularly go as high as 2. However, in light of there being so many champions whose entire win conditions are contingent on dashing and moving around, Disruption inadvertently became a universal response. It's for that reason I believe they're potentially the most future-proof champions in League of Legends. As more cast members who rely on mobility to fight get released, Disruptors in response become that much more effective in the metagame. What I'm trying to say is Poppy mains might be onto something. Your champion, holy shit. Why does your Q do 18% max health damage with a 200% bonus AD ratio on a 4-second cooldown? You can't be doing 9,000 DPS with only a Sundered Sky and be invincible at the same time. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on interruption champions in the comments down below, whether you agree or disagree with the notion of them being future-proof. As always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other champion archetype discussions if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.